The doorbell cracked the night open at 3 a.m., and I almost didn't move until I saw my sister Rachel through the peephole, half hidden in the porch shadow. When I opened the door, everything slowed. Her right eye was swollen shut, a bruised crescent spreading toward her temple. Behind her, my niece Olivia trembled in her wheelchair, clutching a backpack covered in cartoon unicorns. Snow water seeped from their coats onto my welcome mat. "We didn't know where else to go," Rachel whispered. Her voice broke on the last word. A text buzzed in my pocket. "My mother. Don't you dare take them in. Martin says they stole from us. Police are involved." The message landed like a physical blow. I looked down at Olivia's face, terrified, small, unable to run. In that instant, the neat, respectable life I'd tried so hard to maintain shattered into shards. "Get inside," I said, stepping back and making space for the wheelchair. Rachel flinched at the word, as if she'd forgotten its meaning. She eased through, arm around Olivia, limping. Under the hallway light, I could finally see what the night had hidden. A cut along Rachel's jaw still dark with fresh blood, bruises circling her wrist the shape of fingers. "Did Martin do this?" I asked, though I already knew. Rachel's nod was barely a movement. "Mom watched," she said. She hadn't stopped him. She told them to leave when I couldn't give them Liv's disability check. Her disability check? My own voice sounded foreign. "They've been taking it?" Memory flashed. Cruise tickets on their counter last week, the steady stream of money I'd sent for furnace repairs and medical bills. All of it had been siphoned away while Olivia's support disappeared. Rachel's voice fell to a whisper. "Last month there were tickets. They said it was for the house." I led them to the spare bedroom and sat at the kitchen table long after they fell asleep, scrolling emergency housing lists and legal resources. Rachel's phone lay where she'd left it, plugged in. A voicemail notification pulsed. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. My mother's voice came through cold and familiar in a way that made the cup shatter in my hand. "If you embarrass me in front of Martin again, I swear I'll make you both disappear. That crippled brat better stay quiet, too. We know people at social services who can take her away with one phone call." The mug hit the floor and I recorded the message on my own phone. Evidence. That was the first weapon in a war I hadn't wanted but couldn't ignore. 3 days blurred into a haze of calls and forms. Rachel's bruises changed color and the hospital cleaned Olivia's frostbitten fingers. The physical wounds began to mend. The fear did not. Then, the doorbell rang again. Martin stood on my porch with a bouquet of supermarket flowers that looked absurd against the falling snow. My mother sat in the SUV behind him, engine idling. They'd found my address in family records. "Nicole," Martin said, voice syrup sweet. "We've come to take the girls home. It's all a misunderstanding." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "A misunderstanding? Rachel has a concussion. Olivia has frostbite. She's unstable," Martin said with that same fixed smile. "She attacked me first. Ask your mother. We only want what's best for the child." "Best?" I felt the heat of it rise. "You mean taking the disability checks for a Caribbean cruise?" His smile twitched. "You were always the troublemaker. We took care of them for years. We deserve compensation." Compensation. The word tasted like bile, taken from a child who couldn't defend herself. I stood on my porch in the cold and saw, with piercing clarity, the family I thought I knew unraveling into something savage and small. Martin leaned in close, lowering his voice to a hiss. "I'm still on the lease. I could call you a kidnapper, or say my sister ran off. How would that look for your tech job?" I stepped back, pulling out my phone. "Maybe you should try saying that to the police," I said, pressing record and angling the screen toward him. "Explain how you knocked my sister out. How you left a disabled child alone in the snow. How you pocketed federal benefits meant for a minor." His expression twisted with rage. "You think you're clever. Always acting superior." "No, Martin," I said calmly. "I just see you for what you are now." He stormed back to the SUV. My mother stayed silent, never once looking at me or stepping out. As they drove off, I knew this wasn't the end. 2 weeks later, I sat in a sterile courthouse conference room with Rachel and our attorney, Diane, whom we'd found through a legal aid service specializing in family abuse cases. Across the table, my mother and Martin had filed an emergency custody petition for Olivia. accusing Rachel of being unfit and me of unlawfully harboring a child. They're portraying you as unstable, Diane explained, flipping through their filing. And they claim Olivia needs care only they can provide. Rachel's hands shook. They'll win, won't they? They always do. Not today, I said, sliding a USB drive across to Diane. This has 3 key pieces of evidence. A voicemail of my mother threatening them, bank statements showing Martin deposited Olivia's disability funds into their personal account for 8 months, and medical records from the night I took them in. The hearing began. The judge scanned the filings with a sharp, critical gaze. Martin sat perfectly composed. My mother beside him in her Sunday best, both exuding the image of concerned guardians. Your Honor, their lawyer began. My clients have provided a stable home for years. Ms. Jenkins has a history of instability and left their home suddenly, taking a vulnerable child into unsafe conditions. The judge turned to our side. Ms. Jenkins, how do you respond? Rachel froze. I squeezed her hand and stood. Your Honor, may I speak on behalf of my sister? The judge nodded. My sister didn't abandon her home, I said firmly. She and her disabled child were forced out after being assaulted by my stepfather. We have evidence to support this. Objection. Their lawyer shot up. These claims are unfounded. The judge raised a hand. I'll allow the evidence. Diane played the voicemail. The courtroom went silent as my mother's own voice rang out, threatening her daughter and granddaughter. Her face turned pale as the recording played. This recording was made without consent, their lawyer argued. Single-party consent is legal in this state, Diane countered smoothly. And that's only the beginning. Next, Diane displayed the bank records. 8 months of Olivia's disability payments had been deposited into Martin and my mother's personal accounts. These funds are intended for Olivia's care, Diane said firmly, letting the weight of the evidence settle in the room. Instead, the money had gone toward a Caribbean cruise, extravagant shopping sprees, and luxurious spa treatments. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Martin leaned in, whispering urgently to their attorney. I pressed on. Medical records from the night Miss Jenkins and her daughter had arrived at Nicole's apartment detailed multiple bruises, a mild concussion, and the early signs of frostbite. The judge scanned the files in silence, her expression unreadable. Then her gaze settled firmly on my mother. Mrs. Whitmore, how do you respond to these claims? My mother rose, smoothing her skirt with practiced calm. Your Honor, we have always cared for Rachel and Olivia. Yes, we were firm at times, but every action was for their well-being. For their well-being? Martin snapped before his lawyer could intervene. Do you realize how expensive it is to raise a child with special needs? The medical appointments, adaptive equipment, dietary requirements, every penny of that money was meant to cover our sacrifices. The courtroom fell into tense silence. The judge lifted her pen, paused, and addressed him softly. Mr. Whitmore, are you confessing that you spent the child's disability funds for personal use? Martin's lawyer attempted to speak, but it was too late. His face flushed crimson. We earned every cent dealing with them, he muttered. The judge's gavel struck decisively. Emergency petition denied. I am ordering an immediate review of potential misuse of disability benefits, along with possible criminal charges for assault and child endangerment. Temporary custody of Olivia Jenkins is awarded to her mother, with supervised visits for the grandparents at the court's discretion. As the courtroom emptied, my mother grabbed my arm, her nails biting into my skin. You've ruined this family, she hissed. I met her cold eyes, the same eyes that had watched abuse without a flinch. No, Mom, I said quietly. You did that yourself. 3 months later, I sat on the porch of the modest house Rachel, Olivia, and I now called home. After the court ruling, we pooled our savings, and I managed a down payment on this fully accessible home. The spring air smelled of fresh starts as Rachel brought out lemonade. Her movements were no longer cautious. Her smile finally reached her eyes. Olivia wheeled herself up the ramp we'd built together, proudly holding her newest drawing, 3 stick figures in front of a house labeled My Family. Do you think it's finally over? Rachel murmured, her eyes following Olivia as she filled the page with crayons. I keep thinking about the restraining order against Martin, the investigation into the stolen benefits, and the therapy sessions slowly helping us put the pieces back together. Not entirely, I admitted truthfully. But we're starting a new chapter now. My phone buzzed, pulling my attention. A new email blinked on the screen. The court had approved our restitution request. Martin and my mother were legally required to repay every cent they had taken from Olivia, plus interest. The divorce between my mother and Martin had been finalized just last week, another casualty of the stress brought by investigations and court battles. Justice didn't arrive in dramatic moments or flashing sirens. It came quietly, through legal documents, safe evenings, and the small comforts that let a child feel secure at home instead of scared. As the sun dipped low, painting the horizon with shades of gold and rose, Olivia's laughter rang out as she chased a squirrel across the yard. The broken fragments of our lives were slowly knitting together into something new. Not flawless, but resilient where it had been fractured. Healing doesn't look like triumph or dramatic closure. It looks like showing up consistently, day after day, until those you care about no longer startle at sudden movements. It's in the little wins, the soft mornings, the calm after years of chaos. It's us, 3 survivors slowly finding our way back to safety. And one last thing before you go. If you're someone who loves expanding your mind, audiobooks are a game changer. I've partnered with Audible so you can enjoy your first month completely free. Over 500,000 titles ready to explore. Details are in the description. Don't miss out.